Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
What's up, gamers? My name is Chris Diggins. I'm a writer and critic as well as a co-host of the podcast Mostly Nitpicking, a weekly dissection of a piece of pop culture. I've also got a newsletter called A Little Perspective on Substack, where I share critical essays and fiction I've written. You can find me on Blue Sky at @cdiggins. Have you ever wondered what happens after we die? Do you spend your days pondering whether it is better to calmly accept one's fate or rage against the dying of the light? Are you interested in the clash of philosophy of empiricism and skepticism versus romanticism and mysticism? Do you question the very nature of reality and what it means to exist? No? Oh. Well, do you like fast-paced parry-based combat, gorgeous hand-drawn artwork, incredible music, some of the best boss fights ever designed, and a menagerie of beautifully rendered cat aliens? Then you should definitely still play Nine Sols, because it has all that and even more. But let's back up. Nine Sols is the third game by Taiwanese studio Red Candle Games. Set in a world that's a blend of Chinese mythology and sci-fi, dubbed Taopunk by its creators, you play as Yi, a cat-like alien, or Solarian, who awakens centuries after being betrayed by his erstwhile colleagues. Seeking revenge for this and other initially unstated grievances, Yi sets out across New Kunlun to track down the Nine Sols, get it, who betrayed him and take back control. But along the way, his relationship with the human child who woke him, Xuan, challenges him and makes him reconsider his own past deeds. Before Nine Sols, Red Candle were best known for their beloved horror games, Detention and Devotion, which made their choice to make an action platformer Metroidvania game with Sekiro-style combat kind of an odd fit stylistically. Their announcement trailer was impressive enough, and they'd built up enough goodwill that their crowdfunding goals were almost immediately met. But even their most devoted fans could be forgiven for being skeptical. After all, however good Detention and Devotion were, they were story-driven horror games where the main form of interaction was walking around and solving puzzles. Almost nothing about them could prepare developers for the challenge of creating a game where the most minute differences in the controls can make the difference between a satisfying gameplay loop and an unbearable slog. And yet, Red Candle rose to that challenge far better than I would have expected. Nine Sols controls like a dream, quick, responsive, and fluid. Part of that may be because those controls are relatively simple. Yi starts the game with only a handful of basic actions: a jump, a 3-hit combo, a delayed blast talisman, and the all-important parry. You get a few new tricks over the course of the game, but they're mostly just variations on these 4 options. That means no matter how hectic things get, you never feel overwhelmed, since it's always just a question of dodge, parry, or attack. And rest assured, things will get hectic. Combat in this game is very fast-paced. Though enemies almost always telegraph their attacks, they still strike with surprising speed and ferocity. But worry not. Most of the time, there's no need to dodge. Instead, you parry. Parrying in Nine Sols is as simple as pressing a single button at the moment the attack would hit you. Do that with the right timing, and you'll be greeted by a victorious gong sound as the attack passes harmlessly through Yi. As you progress, you get other types of parry as well, until just about every attack in the game can be rendered harmless. With quick enough timing, you can avoid ever taking damage without having to dodge once. But what if you don't have quick enough timing? The game has a whole system for that too. If you parry with okay but not perfect timing, you still avoid the attack, but you take what the game calls internal damage. That means you take temporary damage equal to what the attack would have done. Spend enough time not taking damage, and that will eventually heal. But if you take a hit before then, all your internal damage becomes real damage. So if you're not the best at timing your parries, you can still make it through. As long as you don't get hit. This makes the game less punishing overall, but when you're in the middle of a tense fight and a few imprecise parries have turned your whole health bar red, you'll feel your heart pound in your chest and the sweat form on your brow. You're not the only one who takes internal damage, though. Enemies take it too when you attach a talisman or pull off certain parries. But converting that into real damage isn't as simple as just hitting them. Instead, you need to detonate a talisman Yi has attached. This lets you turn your parries into an offensive weapon, building up the internal damage before exploding it all in a dazzling blast. When you finish off an enemy with one last explosion after a furious exchange of blows and parries, it's one of the best feelings in the game. And while all of that makes the basic gameplay loop really fun, it gets turned up to 11 with the boss fights. Bosses in Nine Souls attack viciously and relentlessly, forcing you to master the parry system if you want to survive. What's more, every boss has at least 2 phases, which the designers use to teach you the basics of their attack pattern before turning it up or adding a twist in the other phases that makes it more complicated. That may sound like pretty basic design, but it's hard to describe just how masterfully the developers have tuned the bosses to perfection. Difficult, but not unfair, each with their own unique style, they're the highlight of what's already a fantastic game. And it all culminates in the final boss fight. I won't spoil what the fight is, but it's a true test of your mastery over the game's systems. An epic confrontation that honestly might be my favorite boss fight of all time. All of that would be more than enough for me to consider this game an astonishing achievement. But as well designed as it is, and as fun as it is to play, that's not what sticks with me the most. You might have guessed from my intro, but Nine Souls is a deeply philosophical game. The story is heavily influenced by Taoist philosophy, to the point that they explicitly call the guiding philosophy of Solarian society Taoism. It's not just lip service either. Nearly every aspect of the game's writing is suffused with Taoist thought, permeating the entire experience. Like I mentioned at the start, the game covers a variety of existential themes. I don't want to get too specific and spoil the experience of watching the game's story unfold, but it raises weighty questions about how we live our lives and how we face the prospect of death. In true Taoist fashion, it doesn't offer any hard and fast answers, but the way it brings up and forces you to reflect on those questions is genuinely thought-provoking. I found it so effective, it made me interested in learning more about Taoist philosophy in real life. I don't want to make it sound like the game's philosophizing is didactic or lifeless, though. Quite the contrary, it all comes from the characters and their relationships. Yi, Xuan, all the Sauls, and every other character all have their own particular points of view, and they all articulate them through both thought and action. It is through their conversations, their arguments, and yes, their fights, that these questions come alive. In a way, the boss fights in Nine Souls aren't just battles between 2 people. They're a clash of ideas, a struggle between Yi's emerging viewpoint and the various ideologies and strains of thought his enemies represent. But the centerpiece of everything the game story is trying to do is the relationship between Yi and Xuan. In a lot of ways, the 2 are polar opposites. Yi's cold, even rude. He's stubbornly rationalist, dismissing anything that can't be explained by science, and incredibly opinionated. Meanwhile, Xuan is open and friendly. He's a gentle kid, adaptable and appreciative of the mysteries of life. Or maybe Yi is stoic but heartfelt and honest. He's deeply intelligent, willing to question received wisdom and old dogmas to search for new and better things. And maybe Xuan is naive and overly trusting. He has his head in the clouds and will accept what he's told without question. Or maybe they're both all of those things, and also none of them. Certainly as the game goes on, as they talk and bond over the many trinkets and pieces of Solarian culture Yi gives to Xuan, they both influence each other more and more, until these traits start to blend, bringing out the best in each other. That's what I mean when I say their relationship is the centerpiece of what the game is trying to do. It's not just that they're the central characters, or that Xuan is the catalyst for Yi's growth as a person. It's that they represent opposing yet complementary viewpoints. That contradiction is essential to the Taoist philosophy that inspired the game, and it's an amazingly succinct and effective expression of a concept that can be difficult to grasp. But more than anything, those little snippets of conversation between Yi and Xuan talks about life and philosophy filtered through everyday topics are the heart and soul of the game. There are plenty of big dramatic moments, plot twists, and epic fights, and all of that is incredible. But Yi and Xuan sitting down and playing a game together, talking about their strategies and in doing so revealing so much about how they look at the world, that's something I still think about months later, so deeply compelling is their character arc together. And in the end, isn't that the kind of thing that life is all about? Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
Welcome to No Small Games, the indie gaming recap and review podcast. I'm Kate, also known as Cater Blossom.
And I'm Emily. You might also know me online as The Specific Egg.
And we met streaming and playing video games on Twitch.
At No Small Games, we combine our favorite genres to experience everything the indie game world has to offer and share it with all of you. We believe there are no small games, only small game studios.
Each episode, we'll choose one indie game that we each played separately and discuss our playthrough experience together.
The good, the bad, and our most memorable moments. We'll follow our recap with a review and announcement of which indie game will be featured on our next episode.
We invite you to play each game along with us and would love to hear from you about your playthrough experience.
Hey, Kate.
Hey, Emily.
I hope that No Small Games brings everyone some big fun.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.